History of English Literature, Part B, Short Questions with Answers. Elizabethan Age, 1558 to 1603. Question 1. Write a short note on the Renaissance. Answer. The Renaissance was, in essence, an intellectual rebirth. Literally, Renaissance means rebirth or reawakening, and the name refers to the rebirth of classical, especially Greek learning after centuries of comparative neglect. The Renaissance was the period in which the great revival of learning, which started in Italy in the 13th century and which came to England in the second half of the 14th century and reached full blooming. The Renaissance is rightly regarded as the chief force in the making of modern European literature. It is the Renaissance influence which make the Elizabethan Age wonderfully fertile, productive and splendid. The period ranks as one of the greatest in the annals of the world's literature. There was an abundance of translations, classical literature, mythology, fine arts like painting, sculpture, and music, and Phelan pandaled to aesthetic sensibility of the English nation. The Renaissance does not only mean the revival or rebirth of classical learning, it also means an awakening of the minds of men. Freedom of thought and freedom of action were the dominant passions of the age. The Renaissance freed the minds of men from the shackles of medievalism. The process started in the age of Chaucer and reached its consummation during the Elizabethan period. During the Elizabethan period, the Renaissance spirit is marked with a growing sense of beauty and an increasing enrichment of life. The Renaissance period is therefore an age of materialism and frank and bold enjoyment of life. Beauty was a passion with the Renaissance people, and women are regarded as adorable creatures. England's trade and commerce flourished, and the country grew and became prosperous. So it can be said that the Age of Renaissance is a glorious period, notable for rapid expansion of commerce, new scientific discovery, intense political nationalism, a spirit of individualism, humanism, religious controversy. It was such a glorious age in which men of genius like Shakespeare, Spencer, Marlowe, Bacon, Ben Jonson could make their mark. Question 2. Write a short note on Sir Thomas More and his Utopia. Answer. Sir Thomas More was one of the most attractive and finest spirits of the reign of Henry VIII. He was a devoted Catholic and took part in Protestant struggle. The most important of Thomas More is his Utopia. The book was published in 1516. The name of the book is Greek, which means no place. The book is famous because it outlines an imaginary ideal condition of society, which begins with Plato's Republic. Utopia broadly deals with the relation of the state and the individual. It consists of two parts. In the first part, there is a vivid picture of the terrible events in which England was suffering through war, lawlessness, wholesale death, misery of farmers, absorption of the land by the rich, and other corruptions in church and state. In the second part, in contrast to all these, an imaginary Raphael Hitlerday describes the customs of the Utopia, which is a remote island in the new world to which the chance has carried him. more expresses some of the ideals for the world to attain. He sets down an admirable program for human progress. The chief purpose in the life of Utopia was to secure both the welfare of the state and the development of the individual by acquiring higher faculties. The state is to be democratic, socialistic, and communistic, and the will of the individual subordinated to the advantages of all. In other words, the interest of an individual should be recognized identical with that of others. Everyone is obliged to work and not to overwork. 6 hours a day make allotted period. The rest of the time is free. One must have free time to enjoy and to develop the quality of mind and spirit. Every citizen must be given fundamental education. There is no religious dogmatism nor any sort of scholasticism in More's picture of Utopia. All religions are authorized and tolerance is the very principle of living there. Indeed, the picture of a perfectly organized socialistic, secular, and liberal society. In fact, it is a unique book on the art of life and living. Question 3. What do you mean by humanism? The terms Renaissance and humanism are often applied to the same movement. Humanism applied to the revival of classical literature and was so called by its leaders following the example of Petrarch. They held that the study of classics, more human writing rather than the old theology, was the best means of promoting the largest human interests. In the 16th century, the word humanist was coined to signify one who taught or worked in the stadia humanitatis of humanities. There is grammar, rhetoric, history, poetry, and moral philosophy. Scholarly humanists devoted themselves to the rediscovery and intense study of first Roman and then Greek literature and culture. In particularly the works of Cicero, Aristotle, Plato, and contributed greatly to the store of materials and ideals of European Renaissance. Petrarch has been called the father of humanism. He was not only a poet but also a classical scholar who was greatly impressed by ancient culture. Similarly, Boccaccio, Machiavelli, Erasmus, Montaigne, Sir Thomas More, Sir Philip Sidney, John Colet, Edmund Spencer, John Milton were the prominent humanists. Their works were important in the context of the Renaissance. Each one of them exemplifies ease and confidence in the use of vernacular without which no Renaissance can be creative and successful. Renaissance humanists were pious Christians who incorporated the concept and ideals inherited from pagan antiquity in the frame of Christian creed. Many humanists stress the need of a rounded development of man's diverse powers, physical and mental, artistic and moral, as opposed to merely technical or specialized training. Matthew Arnold, the great proponent of humanism in the Victorian period, strongly defended the predominance of human studies in general education. So we can say that humanism represents and emphasizes the dignity of man and his perfectibility. Question 4. Write a short note on the Tuttle's Miscellany. Answer. A number of early Elizabethan poems and songs were printed and published together by one printer, Mr. Richard Tuttle. Another title, Songs and Sonnets, written by the Right Honourable Lord Henry Howard, late Earl of Surrey, and others. The volume is popularly known as the Tuttle's Miscellany. It is found to contain poems mainly from Watt and Surrey and from some other poets. The volume proved to be immensely popular and passed through several editions within a short span. The first 32 pages of the Miscellany contains 36 poems of Surrey. These are followed by Watt's poems. The other contributions to Tuttle's Miscellany include Nicholas Gimelt, Thomas Lord Fox, John Heywood, Edward Somerset, etc. There are love poems, sonnets in the Petrarchan convention of Watt and Surrey, and also the songs of complaints about feminine fickleness and frailty. The historical importance of Tuttle's Miscellany is immense. It is the first surviving printed communication of poetry to a great variety of readers. The collection presents different types of works and thereby indicates different poetical influences and inclinations at work in the early days of Renaissance. It can be said undoubtedly that without the Tuttle's Miscellany, much of the early poems of the Elizabethan age would have been lost. Tuttle's Miscellany, helped by the process of printing, at least managed to preserve the works that had to create a remarkable tradition in English poetry. Tuttle's preservation of the sonnets of Watt and Surrey may be mentioned in particular. Question 5. What do you know about Henry Howard, the Earl of Surrey? Answer. Henry Howard, the Earl of Surrey, followed his contemporary Sir Thomas Watt. Like Watt, he was drawn to the new poetical passion from Italy and endeavored to shape and mold English poetry under its animating influence. Surrey's attempt is not to imitate Petrarch blindly. In him is found the variation in the rhyme scheme to suit the purpose of English poetry. The new form, introduced by Surrey, comprises 3 quatrains with a closing couplet. This grouping of 3 quatrains and a final couplet is a characteristic mark of Surrey and of the English sonnet. Different forms of rhymes used by Surrey include AB, BA, C, EFFE, GG, ABAB, 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 CC, or ABAB, CD, EF, GG. And the last is found to win popularity soon as the Shakespearean form. In Tuttle's Miscellany, the first 36 poems are by Surrey. 4 more poems are found included later. Surrey's theme is conventional, Petrarchan love. His sonnets are addressed in the Petrarchan manner to a mistress to whom he vows love and allegiance. His moods are conventional, the passion and pang of love. Surrey surpasses Watt in his natural imagery, which is distinctly more English and natural than what is found in Petrarchan's sophisticated pictures. But Surrey's pioneering achievement is the metrical experiment in sonnet writing and it gives the English sonnet its own character and grandeur. Surah's another achievement is the translation of Virgil's Aeneid in blank verse. In fact, Surah was a great scholar, a true humanist, and his humanism is seen in many translations which he made from Latin and Italian poets. He translated from Horace and Virgil, and his translation have something of lucidity, the consciousness, and the elegance of original. Question 6. Write a short note of Sir Thomas Watt. Answer. Sir Thomas Watt occupies a conspicuous place in the history of English literature as the importer and naturalizer of the Italian sonnet form. He stands out as a pioneer in the realm of poetry for his introduction of the Petrarchan form of English sonnets. His use of this measure is often rigid and awkward, and he entirely fails to capture the warm, sensuous color and delicate music of the Italian poet. Watt's true ability and skill are revealed not by the sonnet but by a number of exquisite songs and lyrics that he has left behind. Watt was a great innovator and painstaking experimenter with verse forms. Besides the sonnet, he introduced into English the following things. Number A, the Italian Tajarima stanza of 12 lines in groups of 3 lines interlinked in various ways. A, B, A, B, E, B, C, D, E, D, E, D. Number B, the Autobarima stanza of 8 lines with a complicated rhyme pattern. Number C, Watt re-established English prosody, which had collapsed and lost its balance as a result of the linguistic changes of the 15th century. He found English verse in a chaotic state and imported to it order and balance. He started a process which was to reach its consummation in the poetry of Spenser. Number D, in his short lyrics and songs, which are his best work, he combines the sweetness, the simplicity, the melody, and the spontaneity of the medieval minstrels and the courtly grace, delicacy, and the dignity of a man of learning and culture. Watt's poems were short but fairly numerous. They were, for the most part, translations and imitations. Watt's love sonnets, 96 in all, were published posthumously in 1557 in Tuttle's Miscellany. These love sonnets paved the way for love sonnets of Sidney and Spenser. In them, the fire of love burned with a glue, and it was to the credit of Watt that he imparted emotions and passion, fervor, enthusiasm to English poetry. A smart combination of flexibility and regularity is definitely a rich gift to English poetry from Watt. To be continued. Thank you.